There comes a time in life when you just get tired. Tired of pretending everything is fine when inside everything is falling apart. Tired of being the nice guy who solves everyone else's problems while yours pile up in a corner. It's as if you wake up from a bad dream and realize, I can't keep living like this anymore. This awakening doesn't come with fireworks. It arrives quietly, almost unnoticed. But when it happens, it's like someone flipped a light switch in a room that's been dark for years. Suddenly, you see everything that was hidden in the shadows. The conversations you thought were normal start to sound strange. That friend who only calls when they need something. The family that demands from you, but never asks how you're doing. The relationship where you always give in, always forgive, always shrink yourself so the other can shine. Psychiatrist Gabor Maté, who has studied how we hurt ourselves emotionally throughout his career, says something interesting. We don't just get addicted to drugs or alcohol. We get addicted to being overly helpful, to not bothering anyone, to keeping everyone happy, except ourselves. And it's precisely this addiction that fuels unhealthy relationships. Your pain became fuel for others' comfort. Your silence maintained the peace in the family. Your 24/7 availability ensured you were liked. But then comes the day when you say no for the first time, and the world turns upside down. The person who always counted on you to fix their problems calls you selfish. The friend who only showed up to vent disappears. The family gets worried because you've changed so much. The truth is, you have changed. You stopped being convenient for others and started being honest with yourself. And that bothers a lot of people because your growth exposes how much they've gotten used to using you. This first phase of healing hurts. It's not the kind of physical pain you take a pill for and it goes away. It's a deep emotional pain because you're breaking patterns you've built your entire life to survive. You always believed that to be loved, you had to erase yourself. That to have friends, you had to always be available. That to keep the family together, you had to swallow insults. But now you realize that wasn't love. It was emotional blackmail in disguise. And then comes loneliness. Not the loneliness of having no one around, but the loneliness of having changed so much that you no longer fit in the same places. It's like you've grown and your old clothes don't fit anymore. You're stuck in the middle, no longer who you were, but not yet sure who you're becoming. It's scary, but it's also where the magic happens. In this silence, in this loneliness, you finally find yourself. Without the pressure to please, without the fear of disappointing, without the need to be perfect. Just you, with your truths, your pains, your long-buried dreams. And then something you may have never felt before is born. Genuine self-love. Not the Instagram version of self-love, full of pretty quotes, but real self-love, the kind that makes you look in the mirror and think, I deserve good things. I deserve respect. I deserve to be happy. Of course, you'll lose people in this process. You'll disappoint those who benefited from your suffering. You'll be misunderstood, judged, even rejected. But you know what you gain? You gain yourself. And that's priceless. The hardest phase, seeing the truth about your relationships. After you decide to stop pretending, the most painful part comes, seeing your relationships with total clarity. It's like cleaning your glasses after years of wearing them dirty. Suddenly, you notice details you missed before. Those people who swore they'd always be by your side, many of them vanish at the first sign of trouble. Not because they're bad people, but because they don't know how to relate to someone who's no longer willing to suffer in silence. You realize that many of your relationships worked like this. You gave, they took. You listened, they talked. You adapted, they demanded. It was a system where you always lost, but at least you felt needed. Now that you've changed the rules of the game, they don't know how to play anymore. And instead of learning, they'd rather find another player who accepts the old rules. This hurts a lot, because you start to see that relationships you thought were solid were actually quite fragile. They were based on your ability to erase yourself, not on your essence as a person. You revisit past situations with new eyes. The time you canceled your plans to help someone who didn't even thank you. That conversation where you were humiliated but laughed along to avoid conflict. Those family advice sessions that always left you feeling smaller, never bigger. It makes you furious. You think, How did I not see this before? How did I let this go on for so long? But hold on. You didn't see it because you couldn't see it. You were in survival mode, doing what you thought was necessary to be accepted, to belong, to not be alone. It worked for a while, until it stopped working. Gabor Maté explains it simply. Trauma isn't just what happened to you. It's what you had to do to yourself to endure what happened. And what you did was abandon yourself. You molded yourself so much to fit others' expectations that you forgot who you really were. Now, in the healing process, you're peeling back those false layers one by one. And what's left can be scary because you see yourself naked, without the masks you've worn for so long. You feel fragile, exposed, like you've taken off heavy armor you carried for years. But here's the interesting part. Without that armor, you can finally move freely. The problem is, you're still halfway there. You're no longer the person who erased themselves, but you haven't fully built who you want to be. It's like being on a bridge. You've left one side, but you haven't reached the other. And on this bridge, in this space between the old and new you, transformation happens. It's uncomfortable, it's lonely, but it's where you truly grow. The temptation to go back is strong. It would be so easy to call that toxic person, to accept that relationship that diminished you, to go back to being the nice guy everyone liked. At least you wouldn't be alone, right? Wrong. Because that wasn't companionship, it was imprisonment. And you've already tasted freedom. As painful and difficult as it is, you know you can't go back to being someone you're not. Your pain now has a purpose. It's showing you where you still betray yourself, where you still seek external validation, where you still try to fit into molds that no longer suit you. And even if no one understands, even if no one applauds, you keep going. Because you finally realized that the most important opinion about your life is your own. The silent grief, mourning who you had to be. There's a type of grief no one talks about, one that doesn't come with a funeral or flowers. It's the grief for who you had to be to keep people in your life. And this grief hurts as much as any other. No one will text you to check in after you cut off a toxic relationship. No one will hold a ceremony when you stop going to places where you pretended to be someone else. No one will acknowledge that you're suffering because, to the world, it just looks like you decided to change. But you know what's dying inside? It's not just habits you're changing. It's an entire identity you're burying. The identity of the person who always smiled despite bleeding inside, who always said everything's fine, even when nothing was. You're saying goodbye to the child who learned to stay quiet to be loved, to the teenager who shrank themselves to fit in with the group, to the adult who sabotaged themselves to avoid rejection. This goodbye hurts deeply. That's why you'll cry out of nowhere sometimes. You'll miss even the things that hurt you because at least they were familiar. You'll feel guilty for taking so long to react. You'll feel ashamed for accepting so little for so long. But don't go back. This pain has a purpose. It's cleansing your soul, removing layer after layer of emotional dirt that's built up over years. It's your body unlearning patterns that no longer serve you. It's your mind stepping out of autopilot. It's your heart detoxing from the addiction to giving love without receiving anything in return. And in the middle of this painful process, something beautiful happens. You start to truly hear yourself. For the first time in your life, you pay attention to what you really feel, not what others think you should feel. You discover that you're angry, and that's normal. That you're sad, and that's valid. That you're scared, and that's part of growth. All these emotions you used to swallow now have space to exist. This reconnection with yourself isn't romantic like in the movies. It's raw, it's real, sometimes it's even ugly. Because you see yourself fully, with flaws and strengths, with successes and mistakes. You acknowledge that you've hurt people too, that you've manipulated at times, that you've done things you're not proud of. Healing isn't about becoming a saint. It's about stopping the lies to yourself and taking responsibility for your own life. And you know what happens when you stop deceiving yourself? You stop accepting crumbs from others too. The more you respect yourself, the less you tolerate disrespect. The more you love yourself, the less you abandon yourself. It's a slow process, but every small victory counts. Every no you say without guilt. Every time you choose yourself over pleasing others. Every moment you honor your feelings instead of pretending they don't exist. You're still in the middle of the transformation. You haven't yet built all the new relationships you want. You're still discovering who you are without the old roles. You still miss, sometimes, even the things that hurt you. But one thing has changed forever. You can no longer betray yourself without feeling pain. You can no longer give in without noticing. You can no longer swallow insults without choking. And that, even though it hurts now, is the sign that you're truly alive. That something new and authentic is being born within you. The rebirth, when pain turns into peace. After so much suffering, so much silence, so much inner rebuilding, something shifts. The pain doesn't completely disappear, but it stops controlling you. The silence stops being empty and becomes comforting. Loneliness stops being abandonment and becomes companionship, your own companionship. That's when you're reborn. Not with a party, not with fanfare, but with a quiet peace that comes from within. A peace that doesn't depend on anyone's applause, approval, or validation. It's the peace of someone finally living in harmony with themselves. You start to see the world with new eyes. You notice people you overlooked before. You find beauty in simple things. You value a sincere silence more than 1,000 empty words. Life, which once seemed colorless, starts to take on hues you didn't even know existed. And the people who come into your life in this new phase are different. They don't come because you're useful, but because you're you. They don't want you to be smaller so they can feel bigger. They don't use you as a ladder or an emotional crutch. These are light relationships, without excessive demands or mind games. People who like you for who you are, not who you pretend to be. And the most interesting part, these relationships are only possible because you now know how to be alone. You no longer seek others to fill emotional voids. You connect out of joy, affinity, choice, not desperate need. You stopped being an empty cup begging to be filled and become a fountain that fills itself first before overflowing to others. Of course, there are still challenges. There are still tough days, moments of doubt, memories that hurt. But now you have a solid foundation within yourself, a place to return to when the world feels too heavy. Those with this inner foundation are never truly lost. They may stumble, they may stray, but they always find their way back home, to themselves. This rebirth doesn't erase your past. It gives new meaning to everything you've lived through. You don't forget the pain, but you understand why it was necessary. You see every scar as part of building who you are today. You don't romanticize suffering, but you honor it. Because it was the pain that woke you up, that broke you, and in breaking you, set you free. It was the pain that forced you to grow, to question, to seek something better. The rebirth happens in the details, in how you react to situations that used to throw you off balance, in how easily you say no without guilt, in how naturally you say yes without fear of regret. You're reborn when you stop asking for permission to exist, when you stand up, even trembling, and decide to live as someone who knows they deserve good things. From then on, every step is freedom, every choice is empowerment, every silence is wisdom. The final conquest, losing the fear of being yourself. At the end of this entire journey, after so much growth and transformation, one last barrier remains: the fear of being completely yourself. Even after cutting off toxic relationships, setting healthy boundaries, and silencing the external voices that diminished you, there's still a little inner voice that whispers, "What if no one likes the real you?" This fear is subtle but powerful. It's what makes many people retreat halfway through their healing. It's what makes you slip, even slightly, back into old patterns. It's what makes you think twice before showing your true personality. It's the emotional memory of all the times you were rejected for being authentic. It's the echo of the pain of being judged, ignored, or criticized for showing who you really were. That's why, even after so much progress, you still hesitate, still hold back. But this is exactly where true freedom lies. When you finally stop molding yourself to fit into spaces that can't hold your truth. When your inner peace becomes more valuable than any external approval. When you no longer feel ashamed of your choices, your voice, your light. Being completely yourself, authentic, honest, whole. That's the pinnacle of healing. It's where loneliness becomes self-companionship, where doubt becomes clarity, where the pain of the past becomes a healed scar, not an open wound. It's the moment you stop merely surviving and finally start living for real. In the end, healing isn't about gaining new things. It's about losing what no longer serves you. Losing the fear, the masks, the limiting patterns, the silent agreements that kept you trapped. It's about accepting that pain was part of your story, but it doesn't have to be eternal. That a lack of applause doesn't diminish your worth. That true companionship begins when you learn to enjoy your own company. This journey isn't quick or easy, but it's real. And it's only through it that you conquer what no one can give you as a gift. True emotional freedom and authentic self-love. If you've made it this far in this reflection, take a deep breath. You're closer to yourself than you've ever been. Keep walking, honor your journey, and never, never abandon yourself again. Remember, healing isn't a final destination you reach and call it done. It's a path you choose to walk every day, a constant decision to choose yourself, to respect yourself, to love yourself. And this path, as challenging as it may be, is the only one that leads you home, to yourself, where everything you've ever needed to be happy has always been. Thank you for watching this video. We ask that you subscribe to our channel and like this content. Also, activate the notification bell to be alerted about our next posts.